warm welcome, very warm welcome to today's edition of Daily Wisdom from Bhagavad Gita. Hope you all are doing great. Today we will continue on our recap of chapter 3 and we will continue to discuss what Lord Krishna is talking about, right? He spoke about people who give up actions, renounce actions externally, but internally they are still attached to sense objects. They are called hypocrites. And today we will continue on that science of work. It's actually an extension of science of work, which is 2.47 in chapter 2. And Lord Krishna is going to explain it from various angles. So we'll continue on this fascinating discussion. Let me share my screen. We will get started by invoking the blessings of God and Guru. And if you are new, please feel free to put it in chat. That way we know that you're joining in for the first time and we can reach out to you, talk to you, and get to know more about you. All right, let me share my desktop. Are you able to see my screen?
All right.
Yeah. All right, let's get started then. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. All right, Radhe Radhe, good morning, good evening once again. So we have been talking about the science of work. Hopefully, we are able to take some of these learnings back to our day-to-day life and experiment with some of these principles. It's important to bridge the gap between Gyan and Vigyan, Gyan and wisdom, acquired knowledge, realized knowledge. Otherwise, it can stay as mere information, right? Reminds me of a joke of a guy who was a cannibal. So apparently he went to US for studies and he came back and along with his friend, and his friend, he saw him joining a cannibal party, when they came back. So he asked him, what's the difference between the then you and now you? Because previously you were a cannibal, and what's the difference you feel now? So he said, there's a big difference, huge difference between the then me and now me. He said, what is that? He said, previously, I used to eat with bare hands and now eat with fork and knife. But he continues to eat animals, the humans basically. So the point is, if we understand knowledge, then it's important to apply it, put it into practice to reap the benefits, both in letter and spirit, and then it truly has the transformative effect that we are seeking. So let's move on. Chapter 3, verse 7. I'm going to recite it and you're welcome to follow along. Today we have a hard stop, so we'll try to limit it to maybe 5 or 6 participants and then continue. Yastvendriyani manasa niyamyarabhaterjana karmendriye karma yogam asakta savishishyate. All right.
Sam ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Yastvindriyani manasa niyamyarabhate arjuna karmendriyai karma yogam asaktasya vishishyate.
Very nice, Samji. I don't know, how do you manage to get the first spot every day? Something you do very different. You always take the pole position. Very nice. So let's take the remaining points.
Aparna ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Yastvindriyani manasa niyamyarabhaterjuna karmendriyai karma yogam asakta savishishyate.
Nice, Aparna ji. It's a little relatively difficult with tongue twisters, and the meter can go here and there, but very well done. All right.
संध्या जी राधे राधे.
Have Sandhya.
राधे राधे. यस्त्वेन्द्रियाणि मनसा नियम्यार्जुन कर्मेन्द्रियै कर्मयोगम् असक्तः स विशिष्यते.
Very nice. Thank you, Sandhya. All right. Let's take maybe few more hands.
दिनेश जी राधे राधे.
राधे राधे. यस्तेत इंद्रियाणि मनसा नियम्यारभते अर्जुन कर्मेन्द्रियै कर्मयोगम् असक्तः विशिष्यते. राधे
Very
राधे.
nice. Radhe Radhe. Thank you.
उदय कुमार जी राधे राधे.
Radhe Radhe, Uday ji.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe. Yastvindriyani manasa niyamyarabhate Arjuna karmendriyai karma yogam ashaktaha shavishishyate. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Very nice. Thank you.
रिया जी राधे राधे.
How many hands do we have? Let's freeze it for the last 4 and then we get started.
Okay.
Last.
राधे राधे.
Radhe, Riya ji.
यस्त्वेन्द्रियाणि मनसा नियम्यारभतेऽर्जुन कर्मेन्द्रियै कर्मयोगम् असक्तः स विष्यते.
Vishishyate. Very nice. Riya ji. Thank you. Last 2 hands.
रागी जी राधे राधे.
राधे राधे. यस्ति इन्द्रियाणि मनसा नियम्यारभते अर्जुन कर्मेन्द्रिये कर्मयोगम् आसक्तः स विशिष्यते.
Nice. Thank you, Pragi ji.
Thank you.
All right. Last but not the
जी
least,
राधे राधे.
SSPG. Please.
Radhe Radhe, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Yasindriyani manasa niyamyarabhate Arjuna karmendriyai karma yogam asaktah savishishyate.
Very nice. Thank you, Surya Prakash. So let's get started. So in this shloka, Lord Krishna is saying, but those karma yogis. Now previously he said that people who renounce it artificially, they are hypocrites. And now he's actually touching upon karma yogis again in 2.47. We have already gone through this concept. But now he goes on to say, he's yin and yang. On one hand, you have people who are called hypocrites. And on the other hand, he's saying those karma yogis who control their knowledge, senses with the mind, O Arjun, and engage the working senses in working without attachment are certainly superior. Now God is giving his verdict, opinion, verdict very clearly, are certainly superior. Now we have a choice either to become superior in the eyes of God or to become somebody that is who's not really taking their spiritual journey forward. Okay, so let's look at this concept. So if we are given a choice, I think it's pretty intuitive, right? Would we like to tie ourselves up in knots, or would we rather break shackles? Nobody likes to be tied up in knots, right? Everybody likes freedom. Everybody likes to enjoy freedom. And this is a very intuitive concept. Nobody would say, I would rather be tied up in knots. It's fun being tied up in knots. Now, if you're tied up in knots, that might be better than getting tied up physically, than getting tied up in knots mentally, because mind can trouble us big time, right? It can actually make lassi out of curd. How much contemplation we do, it can really trouble us. People, they have headaches sometimes just because they think they have started, they keep on thinking or dwelling upon a thought continuously, and that is how troublesome our mind can be. Now the question here is, the actions that we do, is it taking us towards bondage or is it taking us towards liberation, breaking one shackle at a time? Okay, that choice is always with us with regards to every thought and every action that we perform in our day-to-day lives. So every action, every thought gives us an opportunity, three opportunities, in fact, every thought that we do or every um, action that we end up performing. What are those three opportunities? One is taking us closer to breaking a shackle or breaking a shackle. Second is further tying ourselves up in the knot. And third is staying where we are, status quo, neutral. Everything in life, every moment by moment, we are making that decision. So let's look at the science behind it, okay, this concept. So where am I? Now you might be wondering what happened, where did we start and where are we right now? It used to happen often with me in Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so that's why I keep a mental note of it, just so that you are able to appreciate where we are and why we are where we are. Okay, it all started with chapter 1, where Arjun started lamenting. Okay, you remember that? It is good he started lamenting, but because of that only, and God had planted a doubt in his head, and because of that only, it gave him a wonderful opportunity to uh, provide this beautiful song of God, which is Bhagavad Gita, that we are relishing, right? And all the generations will continue to relish. So it all started with Arjuna's lamentation born out of ignorance that he cannot fight this war. Okay, he cannot take the blood of his relatives on his hand because he's thinking of himself as a body. Then further on in chapter 2, Shishyasteham Twam Prapannam, that's 2.7 shloka is the inflection point in Bhagavad Gita where Arjun very smartly says, I am your Shishya. That means he's telling Krishna, you are my master or you are my guru now. Okay, and that's when Lord Krishna starts giving the beautiful message that we are going through right now. And then Lord Krishna, to begin with, knocks the wind out of the sails of his argument. Okay, that you are going to kill. He said, first of all, understand who you are. You're not this body. And if you're not this body, all these associates or the extensions of your body, these relatives that you are thinking, they are also souls. So you cannot technically kill any soul. Okay, it's a war that you are fighting, right? Because of it's a dharam yudh, you're kshatriya, you're fighting a battle. To first of all understand, even though you may be slaying those gross bodies, first of all, soul cannot be killed. You are a soul. That is how Lord Krishna begins this dialogue. Then he goes on to tell him, he introduced him to the concept of soul, and then he goes on to tell him about his duty as a warrior, because he was a kshatriya. It is of paramount importance for anybody to discharge their bodily dharma until they are situated in their spiritual or the dharma of the soul itself. So he said, by the way, you are a kshatriya, go on and discharge your duty. But then he goes on to explain the science behind performing that duty. Okay, you're going to perform your duty, but perform it without getting attached to results. Okay, this is called science of work. So first of all, you are a soul. Okay, it will take us a while to get to that stature. Till then, let's perform our duty. But when we are performing our duty, it could be depending upon the station of life we are in. We might be a student, we might be a householder, or we might be in Vanparast, or actually be a householder having to deal with so many relations and doing a job and all that stuff. So just understand, just perform your duty to the best of your ability. But the key thing is perform it without attachment to the results. That is the key point, operative word. Okay, and that is what we are going to talk about today. And then Arjun says, you're talking about knowledge or action, right? One is you are asking me to fight the war, and at the same time you're talking about buddhi yoga, science of work, where you contemplate, you are doing things, basically you do things without getting attached to the results part of it. Now tell me, which one is more superior? Contemplating upon the knowledge of who am I am a soul, what is my relationship with God, or propelling myself to an action? So just decisively tell me which one is a superior path, because Arjun's argument is fairly, he's got a merit in his argument, in the sense that if the purpose of life is to realize God, why shouldn't I simply go to Himalayas, contemplate, think of myself as a soul, retreat or retract myself from the entire world and just focus on that aspect only, right? Do my sadhana. Why to even operate in this world and go through all the challenges that the world presents to do that? And that is where Lord Krishna is not going to divulge into the science of work. Basically, he tells him that, if you go to forest, that's the last shloka we did, or if you renounce artificially, it is not going to work, Arjun. You will still be attached to the sense objects. Okay, and if you artificially renounce it, you are a hypocrite. There is a reason why we are born in a family or in a particular situation. Once we learn our lessons, right, that's when, and we have developed enough detachment or dispassion towards this world, we have conquered all our desires and attachment by perfecting Karma Yoga, then you are eligible for a sannyas. But until then, you have to honor the station of life that you are in and perform your duty in the spirit of doing it for the pleasure of God and not getting attached to the fruits of those actions. So not getting attached to the fruits of actions is the key word here. So that is where we are. Okay, so now he's going to further build upon this. Let's look at it, what it is said. So how many actions? There are three. How many types of actions are there? Let's look at type 1 action. Type 1 action is done with mind and intellect. We need our mind to perform any action. However, like I said, Lord Krishna is a master psychologist. He has explained the building block of an action itself. He says that every action that you perform through your mind, it needs an intellect to it as well, part of it as well. Why? Because unless that action is sanctioned by the intellect, your mind will not do it. Okay, we may not know that, but we do that actually, right? For example, if our mind is telling us to keep on sleeping, but we have an urgent flight to catch, or we have an urgent meeting in the office, our intellect will says get up. Otherwise, that face of your boss will come in front of your eyes and wake you up anyways. So intellect is telling the mind, it is actually the governor of mind. So any action requires mind and intellect. However, there are two more kind of actions. Let's look at those. The type 2 action is mind and intellect is needed, and then the attachment comes as well. Okay. Now this complicates the matter, where you have a mind and intellect that you're performing action with, but attachment has come as well, where you are thinking about the results. For example, a surgeon, we have spoken about this concept, a surgeon might be performing an operation in a very, very diligently, systematically, like a factory work, right? One after another. But the moment his own relative or son comes in front of that surgeon, now the attachment will come, fear, anxiety will creep in, and that action will get tainted. Now the performance will become suboptimal. So that is the second type of action, where mind and intellect is anyway involved, but attachment has also come in. Okay, and that is the science when we spoke about Karma Yoga. Now Lord Krishna introduces a newer concept here, right, where he speaks about type 3 action, where you do it with mind and intellect, but replace attachment with God. Okay, or make your mind attached to God. That is the science that he has brought in. So it's a very systematic process. You do things with mind and intellect for most part of your day. You're not attached to your work, office work or anything, right? It just earns you a paycheck. How many people are, falling in love with work is one thing. It can happen initially. But for most of the stuff, we do it using our mind and intellect. And then there is a work where attachment comes in as well, especially when it's related to your, something related to your own self. A teacher can teach students without being attached, because for her, it's just her or him, it's just a duty. But when it comes to their own kids or relatives, they become hyper. Why? Now the attachment has come in. So God is saying, replace that attachment with God. Do it, offer it to God, or do it for the pleasure of God. Now, what do we have to do for that? If you think about it, is God asking us to do something different? Technically, no. You still do the same work. What is the change or adjustment he's asking to do in your mind? Right? It's a technical adjustment only in the mind, nowhere else. Yes, Saparna ji, you had a question?
Yes.
Yes, I had a quick question. Does the attachment come into picture only when we do actions for ourselves or our family or our success or anything, or does it come into picture even when someone does social service? Or
Quick answer is yes, both cases it can happen. Attachment can happen. See, even when we help somebody or do social service, we have a sense of controlling the results. This should happen, that should have happened. I helped somebody and they did not take the help. So that attachment can come in different forms. We really need to have a witness consciousness around where all our attachment can come. Even when we try to do good for somebody, that attachment is there, right? We are silently patting our back, and then you have an expectation around that. I did so and so for this person, and at least they should have acknowledged it or something of that sort. So attachment is there. It can come in different forms.
so then there is nothing like selfless seva then. And what is it? What does it mean when we do selfless seva?
We need to build that sentiment of nishkamta, but technically, for as long as we are not God realized, we cannot be completely nishkam. Okay, but we need to dovetail our desire for a higher thing, even selfishness for a higher thing, right? Swarth, swarth. Swarth is when we become selfish, right? We are selfish. Okay, we have no choice but to be selfish. So don't feel bad about it. We all are selfish because we haven't gotten the perfect bliss. But if we truly understand how to serve our self-interest, then also the job will be done. The problem is we have become selfish thinking of ourselves as a body. When we become selfish thinking of ourselves as a soul, then we'll progress spiritually. Then we will seek the paramarth, or the what would truly feed the soul. We will look for divine bliss. We will look for serving God. We'll look at the higher kind of a bliss. So that level of selfishness is good. The problem is we are selfish, but we are not selfish properly because we don't technically understand where our self-interest will get served. So it's good to be selfish as long as we understand what our true self is. But yes, nishkamta is a sentiment we build towards God when we do the seva, but we will not be nishkam. Only when the Siddha Bhakti, when God starts bestowing his grace upon us, the magic will start happening. His Yogamaya power will start coming, and that's when we start getting Shuddha Bhakti. Then that Nishkamta, God gives us an opportunity to take it to the next level. Till that point, we will have some kind of a selfishness. Everything in this world is tainted with selfishness. Even a mother-child relationship, although the most perfect one, which comes close to selflessness, is also tainted with trace of selfishness. So that is how we are wired or designed. Yes, Saramji, you also had a question.
Radhe Radhe, Nitinji. Radhe Radhe. I had a quick question. This Siddha Bhakti, which comes after Sadhana Bhakti, is that Siddha Bhakti only attained upon God realization?
No. Siddha Bhakti will start mixing with Sadhana Bhakti is a preparatory stage. But the problem is, if God were to give his Siddha Bhakti to you now, the temperature is so much that our vessel will not be able to hold it. Okay, we will disintegrate. So this is a preparatory stage. When our vessel is prepared, then Siddha Bhakti will start coming in. Are getting mixed with our Para Bhakti we get, and then it goes on to the next stages. Basically, there's no Purnima in Bhakti. It's not like you're a done deal at that point. But I think that Siddha Bhakti is something that starts mixing with your Sadhan Bhakti and goes on till you perfect your God realization. At least that's what my understanding is, because though there are different stages in Bhakti also, even after you get Siddha Bhakti. Maybe we can talk about that as well. Aviral Bhakti, Sneha Bhakti, Neha, and all those stages are there as well.
Thank you, Nitinji.
But I'll clarify that. Do you get it only after you become perfect, or it starts mixing with your devotion as you keep progressing? Okay, so there might be a technicality there. I'll clarify that, but I'm glad you asked that question. Okay, but the key point is Siddha Bhakti means perfect Bhakti. God starts giving you when your vessel is prepared. And this stage that we are doing right now is a preparatory stage where we are simply preparing the vessel, cleaning the vessel and preparing it so that we can receive that Vishuddha Bhakti from God. Yes, Samji? Now, Karam Yog, yeah, go ahead, real quick.
Nitinji, there is a question in the chat box from Premraj ji. He's asking, is attachment only to results and not to duty at hand?
Attachment is basically because of your self-interest or selfishness, right? Where you want to control the results or want a certain desirable result based on the actions that you have performed. So something self-seeking typically results in attachment. If you think deeply about it, you are seeking something for yourself. That is what results in attachment. And the fact that you think you are the best judge of what is best for you, that also results in attachment, right? Where you think, if this doesn't happen, then my life is a failure. Or only if this thing happens, I'll be happy. Okay, so Karam Yoga is occupational duties plus yoga union with God. So if you look at the work here, this gentleman, so understand the consequence of your actions. Okay, so typically our karmas are like this. Doesn't happen immediately, but you got the message here. All right, now there's a physical aspect to it and there's a mental aspect to it that we spoke about in work, right? In both cases, when you bring God into the mix, you are doing it for the sake of God, keeping that consciousness, then that becomes Karam Yoga. Otherwise, it becomes Karam Bhog. Okay, Karam Bhog versus Karam Yoga. So this is Karam Yoga. Normally what we are doing is Karam Bhog. And that is why we are repeating here in this world, because they are all binding karmas that we have been doing. Anything that we do for ourselves is a binding karma. Now that binding karma could be positive, it could be negative. It is neutral only when you do it for the pleasure of God or you are not attached to the results of your karma. Now, Karam Yogi who performs worldly duties while keeping the mind attached to God, they are not bound by karma even while performing all kinds of work. So it's like, it's a multiplication with zero. No matter what you do, your karma will keep on getting multiplied with zero. God does not add or subtract basically does not add anything to your backlog. Okay, that is how it works. And Karam Yogi, the key thing is no attachment to the fruits of your actions. Now, the binding karma is because we want to enjoy the fruits. And even the fall renunciants, they renounce action, but they do not forsake attachment. And they are also subject to the law of karma. Now, without desire for rewards is called Buddhi Yoga, or the yoga of the intellect. And working with a desire to enjoy the fruits of your work is called Karam. It is not Karam Yoga. So anything that we do basically is a Karam. If it is a positive Karam, it is a Karam. Positive is prefixed, although you don't see it. If it is a negative Karam, it is called Vikaram. And if it is a neutral Karam, which is a Karam Yoga, it is called Akaram. We'll get into that concept again. Okay. And the point here is, when you work with a desire to enjoy the fruit of your work, right? When we work in office, if we are working for the bonus or the salary hike or the visibility or the promotion or something to prove it to somebody, that is a bhog category. If you are simply working, keeping that consciousness, I need to bring in or do the best that I possibly can do for the pleasure of God, because God will be pleased if I put my skills to the best use, then it is Karam Yoga. Otherwise, it is basically a simple karma, which has a binding nature to it. It cannot be non-binding karma at all. There's no way we can do non-binding karma unless we are bringing God into the mix. And when we do that, then we are breaking shackles of our mind. And it takes us closer to the principle of surrender as well. Yes, Samji, you had a question? You had a quick question too?
Nitinji, what comes did, was it not Karma Yoga?
Which one?
Comes, Krishna's uncle.
Krishna's uncle, for the pleasure of God, he did not do it for the pleasure of God.
What? I mean, he also used to do things, many things, demonic things, but he always had Krishna in mind. Wasn't he doing Karma Yoga?
See, when he's having Krishna in mind, even though he's trying to harm him, sure, he'll get a good result out of it, but there must be other things he would be doing right in his behel and other things for his own sake, like he was collecting tax, somras and stuff like that. So not everything is Karam Yoga. But if you're thinking about God in your consciousness, you brought up a very good point. See, it's like a parasmani or putting something to fire. The fire does not become impure, the thing becomes pure. So whether you think of God in a loving sentiment or in a sentiment of hatred, you will still get the same effect. Okay, that is how magnificent God, generous God is. It's like a paras or a philosopher's stone. Whether you touch something intentionally to turn it into gold, or you touch it accidentally, angrily, if you throw something towards it, still it will turn it to gold, because that is the property of a philosopher's stone or a paras patthar. Having said that, it is not a recommended practice for ordinary mortals to think about God in a sentiment of hatred. People who did that and achieved God realization were people like Kans, Ravan, and all, right? Who were already God realized. They were doing a Leela, right? Jai Vijay story, you've heard about that. So people of that stature can actually pull it off. Normal people cannot pull it off.
Yes, but we think of God without sentiments while doing things, while working.
Without
During our actions, we think of God, but not with any sentiment. In that case,
that is fine. If you are able to build that gradually, sentiments is a matter of time before they'll start coming in. Right?
okay.
Initially, they may not come, but eventually you are doing a simulation, right? So you will not shed a tear every time you do work. Oh God, I did it for your pleasure. But eventually it will happen, I guess. You start building that one step at a time.
Okay.
Right? At least at the back of the mind, when you start building that consciousness, you know what? I'm doing it. I don't have to think about the results. I don't control the results. Okay. I'm going to violate the principle if I do that. If you start building that, God will definitely help us. And that those sentiments will also come in due course of time. At least you are building that consciousness, right? Okay, now the question, yes, Arun, a couple of questions. Now, quick thought. A person in household life who practice karam, yoga is discretionary. Okay, it could be a pure karam only. Is superior to the false renunciate who continues to dwell upon the objects of the senses. So somebody in the normal life, they may not have a understanding of karam yoga, right? At least they are doing their duties. And then there is an renunciate who's sitting on the table, basically in a forest, but his mind is still attached to the sense objects. He's not really conquered. Which one would be better in that case? Okay, let's take some questions and then we can get back to this particular topic. Yes, Arunji.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe. Actually, I was just wanting to add a very small thing to the previous question about we were talking about Kamsa and all that. So what I've heard in cases where like Shishupala or Kamsa, when they were thinking of God in hatred, and they were at the max able to merge into the existence of God like Brahma Jyoti, but they couldn't go beyond that.
True.
So that's what happened with the hatred. It's not that they were able to achieve the Vaikuntha Loka, just similar to how Prem happens.
They still realized God, but they were deprived of the higher bliss of God.
Yeah.
They still realized, but it's more of a punishment, spiritual suicide, so to say, than the actual divine bliss that devotees get. Very true. So Samji, if you're thinking of hating God, it's not fun, okay? You'll be limiting your growth and you'll be deprived of God's personal seva. So don't harbor such thoughts if you're having such. All right. Yes, Anita ji.
Yes, Nitinji, some people they know that God pervades everywhere in everything, and everything, whatever is happening in their life is because of the God, and the negative things which are happening with them, whenever that happens, they blame God for everything. It's because of God he is doing it. So what will happen with those people?
The negative things, when they happen, they blame God for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think God in one Bhagavad Gita says, right, nobody is priya to me or nobody is my enemy. So God is used to all of things, right? God deals with atheists also who say that God is the opiate of the masses, or my God died young. So God is used to all this stuff. He still tolerates, he still provides for them. The karmic cycle takes care of it. Right. So if people blame God for that, that is fine. But God is not going to specially take a revenge on them just because they are blaming him. The karmic cycle is anyway, they are anyway subject to the law of karma around that, right? So when they say, hey, Bhagwan, God also replies back, hey, that's all.
Okay, thank you.
That was a joke, by the way. Hey Bhagwan, and then hey, I heard it in one of the movies. Yes, any question?
Sandhya?
Yeah, Sandhya.
One question was with respect to one of the slides. You said that science of working without desire for rewards is Buddhi Yoga. So in that sense, we are saying Karma Yoga and Buddhi Yoga are same.
They are both the same. Yes, very true. Good catch. That will be a dissertation question, okay, in one of the quizzes. Is there any difference between Buddhi Yoga and Karma Yoga? And then yeah, there. In fact, I think it is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita somewhere as well.
And can we start talking about what you have put in this slide?
Sure.
Yeah, so according to me, it's the one who is practicing karma. I don't know whether it is karma, vikarma, or akarma. It's still better than the hypocrite, false renunciant.
True. So if somebody is leading a life, and if you remember, one of the principles of Karma Yoga was not resorting to inaction. So if you're turning your back towards your responsibilities while you are not ready for it, you are neither here nor there. So it will take us to hellish abodes because you have forsaken your responsibilities and duties as well. So no thoughts whatsoever of leaving our household life or turning our back towards our relatives or relationships and using spirituality as an excuse. That is strongly condemned by Lord Krishna. Okay, I hope it puts things into perspective for people who think if you read Bhagavad Gita, you will become a sannyasi. No. If you truly understand Bhagavad Gita, you will not become a sannyasi just like that. You'll become a sannyasi, maybe, may not be. You don't have to become, by the way, you don't have to become a sannyasi to attain God. That is another concept that needs to be clarified. You can achieve God in a household life as well as a karma yogi. However, if you have developed enough dispassion, detachment towards the world, because of your sanskars, you may be born and one of the lifetimes under the expert guidance of a guru, you may be eligible for karma sannyas, and that's how you may choose to lead your life or live your life to help others. That is a different case. Those are more exception than a norm. For 99% of the people, karma yoga is recommended by Lord Krishna. Yes, Premraji.
Premraji, Radhe Radhe.
Good morning, Nitinji. I have a doubt. So far, we have been discussing, our discussion revolves around two things, duty and results. And Bhagavad Gita says that you should not be attached to results. Fine. What about attachment to duties? Suppose if a person doesn't get attached to the results, but gets very much attached to the duty he is doing or very much involved in the duty, will it be binding on us?
See, but attached to the duty, what would that mean basically? See, it's like if I'm a Kshatriya, I have to save. So being attached to the duty would be like a sentiment towards performing your duty, you're saying?
Yes, you can say. Too much involvement in the duty, but he doesn't think about the results. He is not attached to the results. Rather, he can say he is very much interested in doing his duty sincerely. In that case,
a good sentiment.
Will this action be binding on him?
As far as I understand, you can ask this Swamiji, if you're attached to your duty, it is a good state of mind to be in. It is very pleasurable to God. How many people would take a sense of responsibility or duty? It's like I am attached to my responsibility, right? I have to do it, but I don't think about the results. I'll do it to the best of my ability. So yeah, I think it's a good sentiment that helps you to perform or put in your best in that sense, right? It's sportsmen, they use that formula. They go through the drills because they think it is obligatory on them to do that to bring out their best. So I think it's a good sentiment that helps you perform to the best of your ability. See, there was a whole example of a war. I think Guru Gobind Singh's example is there. I keep talking about that. He was fighting a war against the Muslims, and when he was fighting the war, this guy who was fighting with a sword against him, after a long time, this Guru Gobind Singh was able to bring him down. So this guy was at his mercy, right? And just when he was about to slay him, kill him, because this guy was unarmed, this guy spit back at him. And when he spit back at him, he just moved away from that spot. Now, the soldier asked him, why did you move away from the spot? You could have killed that guy. He said, previously I was fighting this guy with the sense of duty that you spoke about, that I have to, protect my kingdom and the people there. So I was doing it with a matter of duty. But when he spit back at me, at that moment, my mind got besieged with anger and hatred. And if I had killed him in that consciousness, it would have been a sin. So you understand, previously he was fighting it passionately because of his duty, but now the sentiment changed. He got attached, his mind got bitter. Immediately vengeance, revenge, some kind of a hatred came in and he stopped. So the consciousness is what God looks at, not the actual act, is what really matters. So if you prep yourself up for your duty and do it to the best of your ability, I think it will be pleasing to God.
Okay. Thank you so much, Nitin. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, maybe a couple of more questions and then we will get to a few announcements and we'll spin the wheel, okay, if we get time. I just love spinning the wheel.
Sairamji has a doubt. He says, even Bhishma Pitama was attached to his duty.
Yeah,
but Krishna himself had to break his vow and challenge Bhishma.
Very true. If you look at it, see, Bhishma Pitama was also attached to his dharma. Even Yudhishthir was attached to his dharma. Now the dharma, only God knows what is the highest dharma. There's no higher dharma than obeying God or surrendering to God. So they also had their secret stash with regards to their own attachments. They also got it wrong. Karan got it wrong. Who are we to get the dharma right? Right? There's a beautiful bhajan of Maharaj Ji. They say, धर्म है उनकी इच्छा में इच्छा, कर्म है उनकी निष्काम सेवा. Right? So that's a very beautiful line from Maharajji's bhajan. It says, dharma hai unki ichha mein ichha, karma hai unki nishkam seva. So this is dharam, this is karam, nothing else. Unki ichha mein ichha, there's no higher dharam than that. That is what Bhagavad Gita ends at 18.66. Sarv dharmam parityajye mamekam sharanam braj. There's no bigger dharma than that. So we can have our own sense of dharma and all that stuff based on our limited intellect, but there's no bigger dharma than just aligning to God's will. Yes.
Arunji has a question. Is karm yoga the same as akarm? And is karm and karm same as karam without yoga?
No. Karam yoga is same as akaram, right? Karam is pure action, which is positive action. You might be accruing some merit out of it. Vikaram is a negative action. So karam is a positive action. Vikaram is a negative action. Akaram is karam yoga. Okay. Akaram is a neutral karma. Multiplication with zero, basically. No more binding karma.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Prabhat ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Prabhat ji.
Radhe Radhe, Nidji. Just the slide that you have shared, the current slide. So it's like in both situations, it's like I am giving one example, like it's like driving a car. Whether you are driving the car on a tough road or a smooth road. So it's like if we practicing thinking of God, doing our household things, then it's like driving the car on tough roads. And when we are in a sort of sannyas and we are at a silent place, and then we are doing thinking of God, and so this is like a driving car on smooth road. So it is always tough but it is always better to drive the car on tough road so that we can become a better driver.
Beautiful. Very true. Great point, Prabhaji. In fact, they say that rough seas make skillful sailors. So if we are not tested and if we don't test ourselves, we will not really know whether we are really progressing or regressing. Beautiful point. Where are you joining us from, Prabhaji?
I am joining from Delhi, India.
Okay. All right. No, good to hear from you. I'd love to hear more from you. Thank you for that. Very nice nugget that you provided. Thank you so much for that. All right, a couple of more hands and then we move to our fun segment. Yes, Shyamji, who would you like to call upon?
Prakash ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Shyamji. Nitinji, I have a follow-up question on the attachment to the duty that was discussed just now before this. So attachment duty, just to the duty is just maybe a sattvic karma, right? But unless you are attached to the God, you're not going to get the actual God realization, right? So just having attachment to the dharma or duty, it's not enough, right?
Beautiful point. Yes, if you are attached to your duty because you are building some kind of a pride about that, or you have not brought in God into the mix, still it is sattvic. It doesn't go beyond sattva. If you are attached to your duty because you think that will please God and I'm putting in my best because of the what God has endowed me with, then it is Shuddha Sattva. That is a good point, because in your back of your mind, the consciousness with which you are building that attachment, even to the sense of the duty that you have, would dictate whether it is Tamas, Rajas, or Sattva. Right? A duty, sense of duty, even a gangster can have. Right? His duty is to protect his boss.
Yeah.
That would be tamasic. Very true. Good point.
Okay. Thank you. And I have, my actual question was different. So in Bhakti Shatak 8, actually, I was just having this discussion in the morning gems. So I was connecting to these dots here. So there, I think one of this verse says this Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga without Bhakti Yoga are like body without life.
True. Very true.
Okay. So having this only Karma Yoga, it's not enough, right? So unless until you have a Bhakti Yoga, is that correct?
So think of it like this, Kamji. When we talk about yoga, right? Yoga itself is bhakti. When you mix it with karam, see, karam on its own cannot stand. Gyan on its own cannot stand. You have to mix it with bhakti. Bhakti is the secret sauce, regardless of whether you're doing karam or gyan. So the bhakti aspect would be there regard. But if you do bhakti, you don't need the ashraya of any other things. Okay, you don't need karam and gyan in that. You have to do that now. This can invoke some kind of a discussion around it. Bhakti can stand on its own. Okay. But Gyan and Karam, they need the support of Bhakti, and even to fructify that at all. Now think of it, what will happen with Karam Yoga. With Karam Yoga, you are building a consciousness of doing everything for the pleasure of God. So you are getting closer to the principle of what Krishna tells Arjun, Sarveshu Kaleshu Ma Manusmar Yuddhascha. So if you are actually building that consciousness, it will take you to the perfect surrender. God's grace will intervene, and you're basically God realization would be completed even through Karam Yoga, liberation aspect of it. Now, if you want to go deeper, of course, the Bhakti, the yoga aspect has to be deepened, right? You're doing Karam, but your yoga, depending upon that proportion of that Bhakti, in what form you will realize God will matter. But Bhakti, regardless, you have to do along with Karam as well. And it will take you closer to surrender, and it will take you closer to the consciousness of remembering God always, Nirantarta. Always means without any interruption. Make sense? In Karam Yoga, you have to do Bhakti, basically.
Yeah. Thank you. I got muted.
See, Yoga is the Amrit. Okay, Amrit, whether you mix Amrit with milk, you mix Amrit with water, with Coke, Lassi, mango shake, everything will become Amrit. Okay, that is how powerful Bhakti is. So yoga has to be mixed. Bhakti is non-negotiable regardless.
Okay, so which means that when we are adding yoga to the karma, we are automatically implementing that bhakti also, right? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Means?
Yes. See, you have to be basically an astic for you to be thinking about God and offering your results to God, right? Otherwise, how will you even bring in the concept of Karam Yoga? So you have to bring in God, and you have to do devotion regardless, no matter which path you pick up.
All right. And as far as we are in the world, I think Karma Yoga is the only, solution, right? Because otherwise, if you go into the sannyas, then probably we can think about only Bhakti Yoga, right? But otherwise, I mean, if you are involved, I think the only feasibility I can think about is this Karma Yoga.
True, and that is why Lord Krishna is saying, right, it is a recommended path for majority. Karam sannyas also you can do God realization, but then it is supposed to be done under the expert guidance of a guru. And Karam sannyasis are rare. Yeah, if you have developed a lot of dispassion, detachment because of your past sanskars, maybe in one of the lifetimes, but it is not a sequential process where you first do Karam Yoga, then Karam Sannyas, then Godland. No, you could actually realize it as a Karam Yogi. So all three paths are available: Karam Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Karam Sannyas. Gyan Yoga as well, for that matter, but you still have to surrender to God in that. But yeah, most practical one is Karam Yoga, because in Kali Yuga we do all work, right? 8-hour work a day. So that is a good simulation for us to build that consciousness of thinking about God and offering everything that we do to God. So it's the most practical tool, so to say.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
No worries. Okay, real quick now, 3 more maybe.
We have
we can make some
chat
announcements real quick, because I don't want to miss out on
the
the
announcement
By the
is
way, we
for
have a
Jagat Gurutam Divas. Yeah, this is my, please go on. Sorry.
Yeah, Jagat Gurutam Divas. Please register for that. Let's share the link if you have not already. I think the teams 3 plus 3 or more, you can form a team. The more, the better. And I think from Daily Wisdom itself, we can have about 30 teams. So please go ahead and register for that if you haven't already. Now you could put in your preferences that I want to register with so and so. Otherwise, you are at God's mercy. Okay, so they are going to club it based on your prarabdha, and then you can still do well because all of you can sing well, and by now you're all trained, right? Because of the devotional segment that we have. So if you want to try your luck, you can do it that way. But if you can think ahead, that will help you. So do check it out. Plus, we have Lohri celebrations this Friday. So if you're in or around Dallas, and you can have a Punjab-like Holi celebration with sarson ka saag, makke ki roti, and all that stuff. That is on the cards as well. These are the 2 announcements that I could remember. Shyamji, over to you before we can take some more questions. Spinning the wheel can happen tomorrow.
We also have on January 14th the Swamiji's Maharaj's Divas. For that, we have a quiz coming on this Saturday, and I have posted the link on the chat window. So please go to the link for the answers, and we have a quiz on 14th January.
Yeah, the same day we are going to have Antakshari as well.
Yeah,
Quiz,
same day.
do study. I think Gaganji is doing an outstanding job of sharing. He's like releasing the curriculum that you can read through and test your knowledge about Maharajji. So do read it. That
Already
it's going to be
posted.
a fun quiz. Yeah, please do come prepared for that. All right. And if you win the quiz, you get a free, with regards to, you will get the first recitation and the first singing during the devotional segment. Okay, if you win the quiz. So that is your incentive. All right. Any more questions, Shyamji?
Okay, that's it. This is the main thing as of now for the Jan 14th. And we have few comments in the chat window. Samji is pretty confused today about Karm, Vikram, and Akarm. She needs a lot of help today. And Chandruji is saying, is sadhana superior to seva? Dharma is my wish and seva is karma. Which is more pleasing to Krishna? Please clarify.
Seva and sadhana, it's a very important question. I think this debate continues. I mean, I think Swamiji has answered it very beautifully. So if you ask him what is important more, sadhana or seva, then Swamiji answered back. He said, okay, tell me which is more important, food or water? Okay. Both are important. Okay, seva, sadhana, satsang, all are important. Having said that, if you only do sadhana, then you will build sanskars of kubja. That is also self-seeking. You are getting the pleasure sitting there. Radhe Govind, Govind Radhe, right? But when you do seva, you will build sanskars of gopis, selflessness. Because eventually we are Nitya Das, we are fragmental parts of God. Our constitutional position is that to serve the whole. So the sooner we build that sanskars, the better it is. Now, seva, especially if you are doing it at the expense of your sadhana, because if it's taking time, it may take longer, but you'll go higher. So both are important. Seva will take you much higher because now you are serving God, you are building those sanskars. The sooner we start building those sanskars of offering, doing seva, getting involved in seva, the better it is. Having said that, we still have to do sharpening the axe every day, which is called sadhana. And in order to protect both of these, we have to do satsang. So all 3 S's are important.
And Ganpej is asking, what is only Bhakti Yoga, which stands alone without Karam Yoga or Gyan Yoga?
So if you are only into devotional practice, I mean, Karam, Champaji is going to answer that question. She's raised her hand, so she can answer it better than I do. So you will have to do all 3, because Karam, even every thought is a Karam, right? From that sense. But Bhakti Yoga, pure Bhakti Yoga, if we have some example, I can ask Swamiji for that. Okay, maybe some of the saints who just devoted their time to that, every act, every thought was devoted to God. Maybe that is Bhakti Yoga, which is a very, very advanced way of looking at it. But I would let Champaji answer that question for you, and we can have a couple of hands addressed as well, because we have 5 more minutes.
Champaji, Radhe Radhe.
Champaji.
Radhe Radhe. Nitinji, you have a very good sense of humor. My question, I would come with my question first. See, all of us are spiritual seekers. That's what we think we are. That's why we come to your class and Swamiji's lectures and all that. And we think we are doing spiritual activity throughout the day. But my doubt here is, see, when I'm doing meditation, I'm doing it. So it is also a karma. When I'm singing bhajan, that is also karma. And when I am doing arti, puja, and also that becomes a karma. When does those karma activities become spiritual activities? Throughout the day we are doing. It's not that only when we do meditation, we are doing spiritual activity. The rest of it is, what are we doing then?
True. I mean, basically, Maharaji has given a very simple yardstick. Swamiji also says the same. Basically, anything that helps you deepen your connect with God is actually a spiritual activity. Rest all is mechanical. Now, it's a very simple thumb rule. Anything that is helping you develop or deepen your relationship with God or develop love for God is actually spiritual, or taking you closer, or increasing the spirit of your surrender. Rest all becomes mechanical. I know it's a very, very thumb rule or heuristics, but it's a very broad brush kind of a deal that we have to really look at. Any activity, is it taking me closer to God? Very difficult to substantiate, right? But that's the answer, at least I have understood or gotten from Swamiji, on this particular question. Is it helping you deepen your relationship with God, help you love God more, or think about God? Anything that takes your mind to God is spiritual. Anything that doesn't take your mind to God is material, because there are only 2 areas, spiritual and material. There's no third area. Right?
How do we know that we are progressing this way? Because all of us, we have very bloated egos. We think we are doing the whole day spiritual activity. We may be just doing the karmas.
True. I think that's more of an introspection and self-awareness. As we develop with grace of God and Guru, we start getting that sense, because our mind is so conditioned, it won't even tell us that what it is doing is not actually in the right direction or truly helping it or not. But yeah, it's a very valid question, Champaji. I mean, we are in an autopilot mode for most part of our day. But if Swamiji or somebody they can do it on a day in, day out basis, then there must be some way to crack that code, right? Where we are every thought, every action, every pore and fiber of our body is directed towards God. That is the ideal state we have to reach one day, right? Sarveshu Kaleshu is what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. That is a very advanced stage. Sarveshu Kaleshu means Nirantarta, where there's not even a break of a fraction of a second when we are not thinking about God, right? Pretty great aspiration, basically. Advanced stage.
One last question, if the time allows.
Yeah, 2 minutes we have. Yeah.
Sorry, then I can ask tomorrow.
No worries. You can ask. Maybe we can connect, or you can put it in.
Supposing I have to choose between doing a meditation and looking after children, and how much I get the satisfaction of meditation, the same bliss if I get looking after the children. Is it the one and the same?
Let's continue this conversation. It's an interesting conversation. It really depends what kind of bliss are we getting here. But it's a very valid question, Champaji. We'll continue with this conversation tomorrow. This is a good segue. Subodhji, I think we have run out of time for today. You can put your question in the feedback tracker. Tomorrow, we can take both these questions and tee off that conversation and continue on our discussion. So with that, I will hand it over to Ajay and Sunil Bhai, and you can stay back for the next session. And Radhe Radhe from my side, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitin Bhai. As always, a wonderful session and truly enjoyable. Thank you for Shamji and thank you for Nitin Bhai. Thank you again. So now let's stop this recording here and let's continue on this journey.